Francuski predsjednik daje intervjue na engleskom, što je vrlo rijetko. Njemačka traži novog kancelara. Evropa traži rješenje pandemije koronavirusa, a Evropa se kompletna boji onoga što bi se moglo desiti u Ukrajini. Mi na Balkanu se bojimo novog prekrajanja granica. Jedan od onih koji dobro poznaju situaciju u Evropi je Sebastiena Maillarda, direktor Jacques Delors instituta u Parizu i bivši novinar koji godinama prati evropska dešavanja. On je naš gost u N1 intervju. Mr. Maillard, welcome to program N1.
Thank you.
You're a former journalist. You covered the last campaign when French President Emmanuel Macron was elected to the presidency, to the Élysée Palace. Also, you covered the Brussels and Europe, and you know the situation in Europe, how it goes. But today, that situation is not good. France is seeking new president. Germany is seeking new chancellor. Europe is seeking leadership in a time of pandemics, and the situation is not very good with pandemics and vaccination. And in your country, in France, the situation with pandemic is pretty dire at this moment. So how do you see situation in Europe today?
I won't say that the situation is not good because there are elections. I mean, elections are part of democratic life, so it happens every 4 or 5 years according to the country. There are elections upcoming in Germany, but I wouldn't say it's good or not good. I mean, elections have to happen. So, and Merkel has been here for 16 years, and no one is eternal. So it's obvious that I think it's a good sign of democratic health that elections take place despite the pandemic. So I think it's good news that we are able to have elections in our countries despite this pandemic. But where you are right that we are, I would say, in a moment of great uncertainty in the EU because of the Merkel era ending, and also the fact that now in a year's time there will be a new French presidential election, and that it's today at least it's impossible to know to guess who will win, and if President Macron would be able to make to have a second term. So the two main players in the EU, France and Germany, are entering a great moment of, I would say, political turbulence. I think it's fair to say that the vaccination, despite this, will go on. And it's true that after a difficult beginning at the start of this year, I think the vaccination rollout is speeding. It's accelerating, including in France. The aim at European level is to have 70% of adults by the end of the summer vaccinated. There have been some unexpected delays because some firms were not upholding their commitments, but others, like I think of the Pfizer vaccine, is on the contrary delivering more than it did. But from a purely European point of view, I still see this as a success, if I may say so, in the sense that we managed to, among the 27 member states, to allocate the vaccines according to each country's population. And that's a sign of fairness and solidarity, because can you imagine if each member state was trying to get its own vaccines by itself, selfishly, and at a better price? And I mean, small countries, it would have been very difficult for countries to get them.
But sorry to interrupt you, but the countries are doing that, because Croatia is talking with Russians. Hungary is purchasing by itself. Austria is talking to Israel. Denmark is talking to Israel. Slovakia lost the prime minister due to own purchasing of vaccines. So it looks like countries are not satisfied with what Brussels is doing and what the team of Mrs. von der Leyen is doing when it comes to procurement of vaccines?
The 27 member states gave a mandate to the Commission in June last year, where they asked the Commission to do this. This is not the usual business for the Commission. It's not even part of their own competence. But the 27 member states asked them to do this, and were part of the team that made those contracts. So they are completely, responsible also for what is happening. It's not because you agree among 27 members to do this common purchase that an individual member is not allowed to do to add its own purchases to this, but that's its own responsibility. When Hungary wants to use the Sputnik vaccine or some others, the Chinese one, that's their own responsibility, but they're not stealing from others by doing so. It's they're adding to what's already agreed among 27. And again, I insist, what I find positive in this is that, especially for smaller member states, it would have really been almost impossible for them to get vaccines produced at the beginning if there hadn't been this even sharing of vaccines. And it was also, I think, a safety for us to know that there was a European authority, the European Authority on Medicine, giving its authorization for the use of these vaccines. But it's still a very logistic challenge, and not only have we to roll out this production among member states now, while also using solidarity with the rest of the world, but also already prepare the second phase, because we know we'll probably have to do again vaccination jabs next year.
I asked a couple of days ago Pierre Mirel, former functionary of European Commission, question, and I'm going to ask you because you're at the head of Jacques Delors Institute, the institute named by former president of the European Commission. If we had anyone else instead of Mrs. von der Leyen with the bigger political weight, such as Jean-Claude Juncker or any other politician with the higher profile than Mrs. von der Leyen in this situation, would we have a better situation or it would be the same?
It's difficult to make science fiction here, political science fiction. It's really a matter of who is responsible for what, and the Commission, as I said at the beginning, if you look at the European treaties, they have no direct competence in matter of public health, but Mrs. von der Leyen, along with Commissioner Thierry Breton and the Health Commissioner, managed to get this mandate by the 27. So I don't see any, not just a question of who's at the helm of the Commission. It's also, firstly, are the 27 ready to collaborate and to give a mandate to the Commission to do this? And this, for the time being, Mrs. von der Leyen has this mandate.
But that cooperation between 27 is seen that it doesn't work over the last few years in some areas. For example, on the enlargement portfolio, the last year or year before that was France. The President Macron was blocking North Macedonia and Albania. Now, the former Bulgarian Prime Minister Boyko Borisov was blocking North Macedonia to start the accession agreement. Can that cooperation be achieved, and how?
Firstly, it's important to point out that if we have to answer those issues, it's because there are countries that want to enter the EU. So when countries are candidate to enter, join the EU, it means the EU is attractive. They want to join it. Nobody asks North Macedonia or Albania to join. It was them who were candidates. So if it was not functioning or not attractive, this question would not even be raised. It's because we are so attractive that they want to join us, you see. Secondly, joining the EU is like a club. So everyone, it's one area where you have unanimity. It's true, and you need all member states to agree for them to join. Slovenia agreed for Croatia to join. And each time it's difficult. But the more you enlarge, the more it can be difficult. It's true that France, along with the Netherlands and other member states, didn't want the accession negotiations to start with the same way they had been done in the previous rounds, because there was a sense that sometimes it had been done too quickly. So it was a push not to block the negotiation, but to change the way it is done, and it's how it's supposed to start. But I think there's an issue there, and it's also true for Bosnia, is for the enlargement process to be well accepted by the population of the existing member states. Unfortunately, and it's something I find difficult in my own country, in France, that enlargement, since to the Eastern Bloc in general, has always been seen as something negative. Or on the contrary, I think it makes the EU more powerful and of course a bigger market and a more attractive asset in the world. So, but there's a narrative, a positive narrative to put in Western Europe to see enlargement, especially in a country like France, to make it seen as something more positive, and then politicians will be more keen to go on with this enlargement, because these countries, all the Western Balkans, have their place in the EU. That there's no question on this. That we say we have a shared fate in that. I mean, these countries are clearly part of the European continent and have their place at the end of the day in the EU.
Who should do that promotion of enlargement? European politicians or our politicians here from the region to go out and to speak with the media in the West, in European countries, because we see in the press that the picture which is coming from here, especially from Bosnia and Serbia, is not that much positive when it comes to the European media.
I think it's a responsibility on both sides, both the way the leaders in our countries speak about enlargement. Jacques Delors, you quoted, didn't speak about enlargement. He spoke about reunification of the continent. So it's also giving another story, another picture. It's not enlarging as something that would go enlarge forever and endlessly. It's reuniting our continent because we have a common civilization, we have a common culture. But it's also the way countries in the candidate countries behave and also treat with the EU. If you are too much looking towards China, as Serbia is doing, for instance, this could become problematic. Do you really want to join us, or are you actually, do you prefer to be close to the Chinese regime, which is another story. So the way the way countries behave also show their willingness or not to join.
But you just mentioned the China, but another player here is Russia. And both of those countries are playing vaccine diplomacy here in the region, and especially through Serbia, which is also playing a vaccine diplomacy at this moment. But what is seen from here in the region is that we are missing action from Brussels, from a commissioner of enlargement, Mr. Varhey, and from Mr. Borrell, because Mr. Borrell is dealing with such a big issues such as Ukraine at this moment, and all others such as JCPOA, and a commissioner for enlargement is almost non-visible here in the region. How that situation can affect us, but also Europe?
I think we have to be careful about vaccine diplomacy because you can have vaccines that are promised, but we don't know if they are that accurate. I mean, the Chinese vaccine hasn't been up to now seen as the most secure. Another story is how much you can become have debt against with China. Look at the situation in Montenegro. So, or you can have promised jabs, but that never shall come up. But we have to be careful if Russia is able to produce enough vaccines as is committed elsewhere. So I think it's countries have to be very cautious in the way they handle with those regimes, with their trying to make geopolitical diplomacy using the vaccines as they did a year ago with the masks and protective items. When it comes to the enlargement process, it's true that we are still waiting for the negotiations to really start with Albania and North Macedonia. It's something that is, as you have referred to Bulgaria, that has been delayed. The EU is not meant to remain with just 27 members. It's a place where countries that are part of the European continent are part of the family and are welcome. And the EU, even if countries are not yet full members of the EU, they can enjoy certain programs, certain policies, to get them familiarized with the future club membership. So I think that's where we're heading. But it's really a matter of also of free will. No country is obliged to join. And look at Switzerland is not a member. The UK left. Norway they never joined. So it's not, you don't have to join. So it's really a question of the willingness of the country, and it has to show that it's determined. And it's not just like joining any international organization. When you become a member of the EU, you are really putting your fate jointly with one of the other member states to share responsibility. So it's you have to think twice before and I think moving too fast is also dangerous in the way that you end up in a club where actually you did not perhaps foresee all the responsibility that came with it. But really I believe that the EU is meant to cover the whole continent. We are celebrating on the 9th of May the Schuman Declaration, that kick-started the whole process. And if you read this declaration, it was, even if it was in 1950, during the Cold War, it was meant and given to all European nations. All European nations are there. And joining the EU doesn't mean you are giving up your nation. On the contrary, it's a way for your nation to become a member of this greater club called the EU. But I never have to choose between France or EU or feeling French or feeling European. I mean, the EU is not an empire. It's not meant to destroy nations. On the contrary, it's there to cherish nations.
But some members of the European Union from this wider region, such as Croatia and Slovenia, at this point are seen as someone who's trying to make or break this region, because we are seeing a non-paper which was sent by a Croatian foreign minister with several others to FAC in Brussels, which will be next month on the discussion. But also we have supposed the non-paper from Slovenia, which talks about territorial exchanges between Kosovo and Serbia, pre-composition of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and all other things. And also Croatia is working closely with the Bosnian Croats on the changes of the electoral law, and Croatia is also threatening Serbia to block it. So how that situation where you have member countries working on such explosive issues can affect the relationship between Balkans and the European Union?
I won't pay attention too much on those non-papers in the sense that they are non-papers and they are just reflecting position of a particular country. But it's the negotiation, as you know, is on a much wider scale. And of course, the countries you mentioned have perhaps a more feel closely, feel very interested directly by what's going on because they have a border with those countries, which is not, of course, the situation of a country like Ireland or Portugal. But it is a decision that has to be taken by all 27 member states who are now in the EU, and the Commission is there to try to forge a consensus among them. So I wouldn't bother too much on a very particular single non-paper that perhaps is a way to put some pressure to raise some issues, but it has to be taken at a higher level and at the scale of the whole EU and see where our interest is. But I know that we cannot make those countries wait forever because the longer you wait, then you have the feeling that we're going nowhere, that perhaps Chinese investment is more attractive than EU who is doing wait and see. So we have to see this on a geopolitical level, not just a legal one, and see what is the geopolitical interest of the EU of enlarging to the Western Balkans.
That geopolitical interest is also Ukraine, which is now under a big pressure from Russia, but also how we can put that geopolitical interest in line of that enlargement and influence of Russia and China with the new American administration, which is led by President Biden and a Secretary of State, Tony Blinken.
Probably Russia is trying to test the new Biden administration by doing so, by those Russian troops near the Ukrainian border. And we have seen the role of Germany, France, and the EU at large and to try to stop Mr. Putin's attempt in this region. So it's a matter of to what extent we are able to come up with European sanctions. The EU has always been sanctioning Russia clearly, and it's a clear message sent to Moscow for years. I'm not saying that it's the only thing we can do because those sanctions haven't yet managed to change Mr. Putin's policy, but they also are a way for the 27 to be united on such an issue, and it is harmful for the Russian economy, for the oligarchs who can be directly pointed through these sections. The question is how we can go beyond the issue of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. But I think it's difficult before the German election to really use this leverage. What we know is that the EU is also, Russia needs the EU. It needs the European market. It cannot make as if it didn't need it. And even if it trades more with India, with China, we are still the second most powerful economy in the world. And the greatest trade power. So the fact that the European market is so necessary for Russia, that Russia needs more Europe than Europe needs Russia, is part of the game. And I think that it's an asset that we can use more.
And just for the end, should we expect that we will see in the future over the next 4 years that the US administration and European Union will play as a joint team when it comes to geopolitical issues, especially when it comes to this region of the Western Balkans?
Not necessarily, not always. We have, of course, it's we see already it's much easier to cooperate with the Biden administration than the previous one, and we see it this week, this very week, with the summit on climate that Mr. Biden is heading. But I think the EU must look always where its interests are. Sometimes they are in line with the American ones, but sometimes they are not. Sometimes they can be stronger with the Chinese, but sometimes they are not. For instance, the EU and China agreed on an investment accord later at the end of last year. It has upset the Biden administration, but I think it was EU showed its own strategic autonomy in that sense that we must not become wait for the green light of coming from Washington to mine our own where our own interests are. And I think the main challenge today for the EU is to show even towards its American partner that it can handle business in its own backyard, if I may say so. Look at the attempt of the President of the European Council in mediating the political crisis in Georgia, in Caucasus. But we know that we cannot wait for the US to take care, to handle what's happening in Libya, in Azerbaijan, or elsewhere in our own the surrounding of Europe. And we must surely come up with a more common foreign policy at EU level to be able to cope with our own interest, which is very fine if it goes along with the US one, and we have very much share the same democratic values, but our interests don't always align.
Thank you so very much for this interview and your view on European issues from Paris.
Thanks to you.
Poštovani gledalci, bio je ovo razgovor sa Sebastienom Maillardom iz Jacques Delors instituta iz Pariza. Naravno, razgovarali smo o brojnim evropskim temama, ali i onome što se odnosi na naš region Zapadnog Balkana. Ostanite dalje uz program N1. Doviđenja.